I'm Lisa Smith, and this is Focus on Business. Putting a thorough energy management plan in place is good business. But like many things we want to do, it's hard to find where that path starts. Today's show will help you find your way to energy management. Sarah, energy is not really on the minds of every single small business owner out there, and yet the Small Business Association of Michigan has created a very innovative partnership with the largest utilities in the state of Michigan. I think we should know more about this.
Absolutely. We have been working with Consumers Energy and DTE Energy since 2017, and it really is an innovative partnership because we want small business owners to have access to resources that they might not even realize are available to them. So with this partnership, we're able to reach out to small business owners and help them with things such as a rate analysis, so kind of a simple, take a look at my bill and let me know if I'm paying the right rate, to a larger project that might involve an energy efficiency assessment, an audit. We've had members replace lighting, we've had members replace HVAC systems. So we're able to walk into a business, talk to the owner, and really guide them from A to Z on everything related to energy efficiency and energy options, really.
So as a total package here, what kind of monies have you saved small businesses across the state?
Well, at the time of this interview, we have saved our members just shy of $600,000, and that includes energy rebates, energy incentives, and just general savings that our members will expect to see. So we're really excited about the trajectory of this program. Our members love it. It really is kind of like a concierge level service. So you don't have to deal with the utilities on your own. You can just call us and we'll help you walk through the whole process.
And this is from the top of the UP to the bottom of the state.
Yes, we partner with Consumers and DTE, but we work with everybody.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome to the show today. Today we are talking with Steve Klaver, Scott Ringline, and Steve Trika. Now you all gentlemen have very different roles as it relates to energy. Can we just go through and say this is what I do and where I work and how that relates?
My name is Scott Ringline, and I'm with the Energy Alliance Group of Michigan, and we focus on helping business owners with reducing their energy costs and also looking at alternative sources for energy.
Steve Klaver from DBI Business Interiors, business owner, and use a lot of energy, so and we've used the audit, the SBAM small business audit, and it's been very, very good program.
Great.
And I'm with Warblers Cove Campground. We're up in Lupton, Michigan. My name's Steve Trika. I also do management consulting. I've consulted with over 75 corporations over the last 30 years around the world, and 15 of those have been utilities. So I primarily view myself as a consumer, that is somebody that serves my customers by providing reliable energy.
Well, great. We have such a distinguished panel here today, including a user of energy. I also use energy.
Yep.
Let's start just very quickly by saying, what is energy management?
All right, I'll take that one. So energy management and energy planning are kind of two separate topics. We look at energy planning in regards to where's the source of energy coming from, what type of alternative sources there are. And then on the management side, it's really the cost of it and how you're using it, the technologies that you have within your business, and how to reduce that cost, not through the purchase price, but more from the standpoint of having more efficient technologies installed.
Yeah, this is a topic that really has evolved. It's something that I wasn't hearing a lot of chatter about 5 or 10 years ago, but today we are. So how has that energy management idea changed from the past to today?
So I think the big shift that we're seeing here is our utilities. I'm with Consumers Energy. They're doing an absolutely outstanding job with the new leadership, looking and asking the question, how do I serve customers in a lower cost manner, but also in a manner that's going to reduce the carbon footprint? So they have in place programs like their 2040 program where they expect an 80% reduction in their coal emissions. This is fantastic. But they can't do it alone. They're reaching out to customers such as myself. So they're listening to customers and they're asking the question, how can we better serve? So I see being from a reactive perspective, from a pricing perspective, on your invoice to being proactive and asking the question, how do I better service that customer and how do I do this in a way that better serves our environment?
Yeah, when I was doing a little bit of research about the show, I noticed that a lot of experts were saying about 5-7 years ago, we have lots of programs for homeowners, we have lots of programs for large industrial business, but that SMB, that small, medium-sized business market, was pretty much just left out. And today, it feels like if you just have to kind of raise your hand and say, I'd like to look at energy for my small or medium-sized business. Steve, you have a business. Talk about your experience with
Right, and as I said earlier, we have used the SBAM Energy Solutions audit, which was very, very valuable to us. We just bought a new warehouse not far from the SBAM headquarters and went through it, and there were many things that I didn't think of that they came up with for changing. We had T5 lights, fluorescent lights, which are probably the top of the fluorescent family, and I thought, well, we'll just switch the bulbs out there, and they said, no, we can go to LED, which will save us about, they think over $2,000 annually just on that. We also got a rebate of $2,700 from our energy provider. And so that just in that one thing, we put sensors on each light, so the lights are only on when you're in that area. Just stuff like that. Using weather stripping on the garage doors for the winter, making sure the garage doors are sealing up tight, those type of things. Things you just maybe don't think of right away as energy. You think more of your HVAC. I think first thing people would think of is your HVAC. And of course you want those in tip-top shape with your filters and all that stuff, so they're running at a optimum. And we did. We're very excited about what the SBAM program did for us.
So you also have the business owner perspective, not from a consultancy. Can you talk about that experience?
When I look at energy at the campground, so we're 640 acres. I serve thousands of customers every year. When they come, they're coming for a weekend or a couple of days, or maybe they'll spend a year, but they expect energy to be predictable, and they expect this to be in a way that's helping to keep their costs down, their cost of how they camp, their cost of how they entertain. So when we look at this, we initially looked at it from a cost perspective, a pricing perspective on the bill that we get. When Consumers Energy became much more oriented toward customer service and understanding, we sat down with them and we invited them in. In fact, Sanju Gwen and Don Spree, who are customer service managers at Consumers Energy, did an absolute incredible job. We went up to the campground and we sat down and we talked and we said, what are our requirements, what are our expectations? But we approached it differently. We didn't approach it from the price of energy. What we approached it from was, how do we help achieve Consumers Energy more sustainable goal? That's the 2040 goal, but at the same time significantly impact what we're doing at the campground. So when you look at, for example, you talk about a cost saving of $20,000. As I talk to customer service reps, I ask them the question at Consumers Energy, are you being invited in? And they'll say, well, maybe energy is a small line item. And so they'll push back and they'll say, it's not that important to me. But if you look at it, let's say his profit margin was 5%. For him to get a $2,000 profit, he would have to sell $40,000 worth of furniture. So now Consumers Energy doesn't become someone that's coming in and telling me how to change light bulbs. They're actually helping me increase my revenues, if you will. So you can't argue any longer that I don't have time to have this discussion. You have to argue from the perspective of, I view my utility differently. They're helping me from a revenue equivalency perspective. They're helping me in an operation efficiency perspective. They're helping me in a talent loading perspective. So it's the number one challenge of small businesses. Talent, right? Consumers Energy is a $6 billion company. They got talent all over the place, and they're knocking at your door, and they want to come in and help. And what are we doing? We're saying, later, this is not important. You can't do that. You just can't do that. So as I talk to Sanju and I talk to Don, and I say, tell me, what % of your customers are taking you up on just the fundamentals? An LED light bulb, doing the weather strip. Less than 70% are avoiding that. All they're doing is looking at their bills and paying them. Shame on them. Instead of looking at this as an incumbents, we've got to look at this as a collaboration, because it's not just about the cost reductions or revenue enhancements, it's about the impacts on environment. And they'll never achieve their goals unless we work with them to help do that. And those are good goals.
Right.
So that's how I think about things.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a culmination of things that really have pushed this forward. Technology is available. Also, issues with load. You know, they want to get out of producing with coal. It takes a long time to displace it with other alternatives, so they have to look at the reduction of energy. And the other thing is we have an aging infrastructure. So, you know, we walk into buildings every day, say it was built in 1960, it's still 1960 from an infrastructure. Same bulbs, same heating, maybe same compressed air, single pane windows, no weather stripping. So, you know, you really have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. It's not just I'm going to come in and change the light bulbs. It's, I'm going to come in and look at everything that you have going on, and then we would develop a plan around what we call needs and wants. Everybody wants the fancy stuff, but there's certain things that they need to incorporate into a master plan to what? Reduce their energy cost, but as Steve put it, actually increase your revenue or your cash flow because you're offsetting these costs with savings. And then the other point that we put a lot of focus on is the maintenance side of the equation. So, you know, in the corporate world, when they're spending capital, they're spending it on the lighting or the HVAC. The expense of maintaining it is completely separate from that conversation. So they're willing to what? Put in cheaper devices, less efficient devices because it keeps their capital down, but in the end it's costing them more to maintain it over a longer period of time. So our focus is really to bring those two together and have a conversation about, hey, this is a real impact on your business over a 10, 15, 20-year period. And those are things that they never even consider. They're not paying attention to that. They're really looking at, here's my electric bill, I need to reduce that cost. All right, well, we're going to reduce that cost, and you're paying a guy, you know, every couple of weeks to come in with a lift, you know, replace bulbs. Now you're never going to have to do that again for 10 or 15 years.
So you're working directly with the people who are creating the plan, and you will show them these finer details. This is what you will project savings for them.
Yeah. So, you know, we talk about some of the barriers that are out there with adopting these new technologies and focusing on it. In our world, it's always money. Oh, we don't have the money. Yeah, you do. You're spending it every day on your utility bill. It's there. You've already spent it. What we're going to do is show you how you can take that money that you're spending on your utilities, shift it over to paying for brand new technologies and maintaining it while putting money in your pocket. And from day one. And there's some new tools out there, especially on the funding side, that allow business owners, whether they're small or big, to actually now look at it from a master plan. You know, now we can look at it from a 15, 20, 25-year plan where typically it was, well, I can only get funding for 5 years. I need to make it a 5-year plan. Well, with 95% of the companies out there looking to have a payback starting at 2 or 3 or maybe 5 years, we always focus on what? Low-hanging fruit, lighting, HVAC, but they're not replacing roofs, adding insulation, new doors, windows.
Right.
That's right. And those have a huge impact. One of the things that we focus on is we call it reduce first before produce. We'll go into a client and they're all excited about putting solar on. But then we walk into their facility and they have 1,000-watt metal halide bulbs that we could replace with, say, a 250-watt LED bulb. Now their load just reduced by 75%. So that solar system they want to install is smaller. And so those are the things that we work with a client on is, hey, let's really look deep into your plan. What do you want to achieve? And here's the steps to get there before you just jump to solar and look at alternative production.
Well, that brings us to an interesting point. I do want to know, did you save money, Steve?
Yeah, we absolutely did.
Okay.
Absolutely did. And the program was great. And I think back to both what Steve and Scott said, there's a lot of other things. The first thing you think of is lighting and HVAC. Those are the first two things you think of. But there's water, there's insulation, as Scott said, the windows, the doors, all that stuff that you don't think about necessarily. You think low-hanging fruit. That's exactly what you called it. And with the program, they go through and they show you all the different ways you can save, which is great. And back to what Steve said, also help the environment.
Yeah, because all the business owners want to do this. There was a study that we were involved with a few years ago, and of those that were surveyed, nearly 90% of them wanted to reduce their energy cost and look at alternative solutions to how they get their energy. But sadly, 98% of all the ideas never get approved because of capital constraints. You know, if you have to have a simple payback within 3 years, you will do lighting and HVAC, but you're not doing, you know, chillers and compressors and roofs and windows and stuff like that because they take 10 or 15 years to pay for. The beauty is, if you combine them with lighting, which has tremendous savings to offset the longer payback periods, then when you put them together, it actually looks a lot better on paper than just separate. And that's why we have that. I mean, there's 6 million industrial commercial buildings in the US. 50% of them are 50 years old. And 80% of them still have 40-year-old technology. So, you know, you don't have to do the math. There's a lot of opportunities out there to save and reduce what we're using.
Do a lot of the people who end up coming to you or saying, yes, I'll put an energy management program in place, do they start with that environmentally responsible idea? Is that where they're coming from, carbon footprint?
I would say no. You know, typically they're looking at bottom line. Man, I can't believe we're paying this much for electricity or natural gas or water. And you know, and that's another utility that really doesn't get spoken about quite often is the water aspect, because, you know, the relationships with DTE and consumers, their focus is what? Electricity. But yet we'll walk into a building that was built, you know, 30, 40 years ago. They have toilets that take 4 gallons per flush, where today we can get them
Gallon
1
and a half,
point.
right?
A
Gallon
gallon.
and a half, yeah.
So you're paying for it twice to get the water, then to get rid of the water. And so, and that's something that people really are not looking at. They're really looking at, electricity, natural gas, what can I do? And that's why we step back, and the first thing we do is we look at the entire building in operation, not just one technology or entity.
So with the actual utility companies, leadership's responsibility has a lot to do with what's being offered here. What are you seeing inside of those utility companies?
You see people getting in the field, spending time with the customers that may not have been in the field in the past. Because again, under these new leaders, and I'm talking about specifically Consumers Energy because that's who I collaborate with, and I talk about it as a collaboration. I don't talk about them as a service provider because they help me service my customers at a total lowest cost, not price. Price is what you have on your bill. Cost is the roll in everything in order to be able to deliver to that customer. So I look at a utility like Consumers Energy, I look at the leaders and I look at what they've declared in terms of mission, for example, the 2040 that I referenced. I need to take advantage of that, right? So they're a service provider. How am I, as small Warblers Cove, going to push a $6 billion company? I want them carving out this pathway and I'm jumping on board and I'm going to take advantage of it. So it's a completely different perspective. It's one that says collaboration. It's one that says we're going to look at this from a longer term sustainability perspective. And oh, by the way, they can come in and they can help dial down on some of the immediate savings that I may be missing. So you have to think about it as a process. You can't think about it as it's a one-off relationship. So my relationship with my service provider, it's a long-term relationship. It's going to go for decades.
You know, another point too is not only the collaboration with your utility, but more importantly, the education. You know, that you point out 70% are not taking advantage of it. It's because of typically lack of knowledge. Not that they don't want to, They just don't know how to or what they should do, and that's something that we talk about. We're really educators first. Get them knowledgeable about the tools that are out there, and not only just the technical tools. We take we call it our 4 cores, but we focus on the technical solution, but also the financial, the incentives, and then the integrated services. There's all sorts of different tax strategies, but then also from the maintenance side of things, we can incorporate this all together.
So great. Just get started. That's the message, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you can
That's
probably
right.
you started with SBAM, the Small
Correct.
Business Association of Michigan. You can
Correct.
start with Consumers Energy or the Alliance.
Yep.
There's lots of places, and you all say, just get started.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Lots
well,
of
great.
resources, use them.
Yeah, great.
But
Thank you so
But
much.
Consumers Energy and DTE and all of our major providers, they provide those resources into SBAM for those energy sources.
Oh,
so
excellent.
we're very linked on this.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank you.
Jeff, we're talking about energy today. We've talked about how to save energy, how to get an energy audit. Energy is everywhere around us. We need it for everything we do. What happens if we have no energy? The lights go out.
Right, and it's a very real problem, okay? So business owners need to think about that, and I think most of them probably don't have a plan, right? They maybe thought about it, but they didn't communicate it to their employees. So we want them to think about, what do they do? What are the employees going to do? Is everybody go home? Do we have a backup diesel generator? How do we get our work done if there is no electricity? Now, this could happen because there's a storm. It could happen from a cyber attack. It could happen that something happens to the electrical grid. We don't know. We don't control it, so we need to be prepared for it. And we encourage people to not just think through it, but also to write it down. And not just write it down, but write it down, communicate it to the staff, and put it in a printed form, okay? So we don't want people to have their disaster plan on their computer when there's no electricity and the computer doesn't work, or it's in the cloud and there's no access to the cloud and nobody knows what to do. So it needs to be written down and communicated.
So we're talking about having to put the plan together. Who do I call? Where do I get a plan?
Right. So you could work with your IT provider to do that. Okay. So we need to walk through the steps. Okay. Who's going to call? Who's going to do the right things? Okay. If there's no power in the building, who's going to call the phone tree and tell employees? Because guess what? There's no email, perhaps. So we can't send an email to everybody. We can't send a text to everybody to say, don't show up for work today because there's no power. Right. So we need to have that written down and communicated.
Not the day after, but the day before.
Exactly. We want it ahead of time. Think about it, get it done, and you're going to be happier.
Excellent. Thank you.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
Joe, we've been talking a lot about energy today, and one of the things that we haven't really talked about is how do you retrofit that building? If you're conscientious about your energy footprint, you've got an old building, you want to save some money in the future, and you're going to be there a long time, how do you approach a banker about that?
It's a great question. Local banks would love to help out small businesses become more efficient and use more of their hard-earned sales dollars on employees or marketing as opposed to their gas or electricity bill, which we know can be very high for some of our local manufacturers. Basically, what a customer should do is come in and talk to their bank and figure out how much they're trying to save. And what's really important is to find an appropriate contractor who knows how to do that kind of project. Somebody who's done that before, depending on the scale of the project. If it's just a small piece, a smaller outfit can work. If it's really a very large project, then you're going to need a contractor with that level of expertise, and a local bank can help make some of the referrals necessary to make sure that you have the right people who can accomplish that project for you.
And so what are some of the steps that an owner should take before they approach a bank on that loan?
One of the things that they should do is talk to some of those contractors and find out precisely how much it's going to cost. Another issue that businesses will face are building codes. If you have an older building, you may have to do some code upgrades as well when you're doing any type of renovation. And another thing to look for would be just zoning type of issues to make sure that you're in compliance with everything that you're supposed to be doing. Local banks can also help make referrals to commercial real estate agents. So if you're looking to do a renovation and it looks very expensive, it might be the type of thing where you might be better off looking to see if you should move and sell your building and buy a brand new one or an existing one that better fits your needs. And those individuals can help you along with your local banker, make that kind of decision for you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Focus on Banking, brought to you by Michigan Bankers Association.
Denise, once you have a long-term plan for energy, are there legal implications?
Sure. I mean, you always need to do some legal planning as well. A lot of these plans are fantastic, obviously, but what you want to make sure that you do is check out your local ordinances. A lot of times, law follows far behind progress. Law is always the last one, and so sometimes local ordinances aren't going to have the mechanisms available, or they'll even sometimes prohibit still what you're trying to do. Some of your advances will be like putting things on your roof, for example, and you'll have a local ordinance that prohibits that. So you want to make sure to do your research first before you start building. And then of course, you're also going to want to make sure that your contracts are not too long. A lot of times you'll want to sign a long-term contract because it'll maybe save you money in the short term, but your contracts at this point in development of long-term energy planning need to be flexible enough so that when long-term energy plans develop, and they're doing so rapidly, that your contracts can as well. You don't want to be stuck in something if, for example, energy development happens quickly and then everything's obsolete and you're stuck with some equipment you bought, so something like that.
Speaking of contracts, there are grants available, and
Yes.
those grants involve contracts as well.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Grants are awesome. And a business owner is going to say, ooh, grant, free money. And as an attorney, I hear grant and I think, oh, paperwork. So grants are fantastic, but you have to know that you're probably committing to something maybe extensive. You have to qualify for it. You may need a grant writer. You're going to want somebody at least to take a look at the contract. It is, at the end of the day, a contract. It's usually pretty one-sided on the part of the grantor, and so you're going to want to just know what you're getting into. So just have it reviewed.
All right. Wonderful advice, as always. Thank you.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Polachella and Associates, PLLC.
Thanks for joining us on today's show about energy. We'll see you next week on Focus on Business.